Can you see the books in back of me?
Yes, no, it's great. It looks like an editor's office with lots of books.
Yeah. And if I hold this up, yeah, I'll just say that's Jasper's way. Is it?
Even better.
Oh, hello and welcome to BookTrib's live chat. We are so delighted to have Cym Lowell, the author of Jasper's War, with us today. And I can see by the amount of questions already coming into the queue that his fans are too. But before we begin, I would like to remind everyone to log on to BookTrib at the end of the chat and enter to win a copy of Jasper's War. In addition to receiving the book, you will also be reminded of exciting live chats, interesting book giveaways, and wonderful articles written by our sensational editorial team. There is so much to talk about with Cym, especially his initiative called Operation Next Chapter. So I would like to begin right now, and it's my pleasure to introduce Cym Lowell. Welcome, Cym. It's a pleasure to have you here with us today,
Well,
and thanks for squeezing us into your schedule. I know you're in San Antonio working with Soldiers Angels, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. But welcome to BookTrib.
well, thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me, Carol. Our Operation Next Chapter is with Soldiers Angels, which is a group of 16,000 volunteers around the United States providing benefits for veterans in service or out of service. And we are specifically working with Soldiers Angels on their Valor IT program, which is to provide voice-activated computers for veterans who cannot use their uh, hands for regular keyboard, either because their hands have been burned or shot off, or because they have brain PTSD type disorders and the brain doesn't communicate with the hands. There's 200 people on the waiting list, and our dream is to liquidate that waiting list and have some reserve for when we have military actions again.
And you've been giving away these computers since we kicked off the initiative in Washington, D.C., and then in New York City. And now you're in San Antonio, where you gave a laptop away last night. Um, for all of the people watching and listening today and all of your fans, I really do want to iterate that 100% of the profits from the sale of Jasper's War will go to Soldiers Angels and this initiative. That's 100%, not 10%, not 50%. 100% of all the book's profits are going to this wonderful initiative. But before we can get back to that, I want to be able to say hi to Emily, who has come in with a question. And her question is, what prompted you to make Jasper Moran a Greenwich, Connecticut socialite? Good question, Emily.
Well, that's a good question, Emily. The reason is because I've been around for a long, long time, and I've worked with a lot of rich socialite families, let's say, in Greenwich, and I was always just very interested with the idea of could a rich socialite, male or female, but I thought it was more interesting the female, become a warrior to rescue her family from crisis, and that is somebody who's a well-to-do socialite. Can they become a warrior at the drop of a hat if that's what's necessary to save what's precious to them, or would they simply roll over and let their family die?
And one of the things that personally I like about the book, and the reviewers who have been reading it and commenting on it very positively, they love the fact that this book has a true female heroine. She will stop at nothing to save her children and find out what happened to her husband. But Scott has a question about the names. Scott asks, where did you get the names Jasper and Trevor? And did you have a list of character names? Do you have a list of character names you go to whenever you write a book?
Uh, Good question, Scott. The name Jasper just came from wherever I was. Excuse me, wherever I was when I started writing that. I don't have a list. I just sort of think about it, and it may have been somebody sitting next to me on an airplane. It may have been somebody I work with. Who knows? I just like the spelling Jaspar better than with an E. And the name Trevor, that name went through 3 or 4 iterations, and I just wanted to come up with a name that I thought would fit somebody who's a secretary of the Treasury, and frankly wanted it to be sort of a Wall Street um, person, and Trevor dies at the beginning of the book, so he's not developed at all. But the story's about Jasper, so I wanted to have a husband to play off of in terms of her personality.
I also don't think that your fans know that you are also an international tax attorney and you travel all over the world and have traveled for most, if not all, of your professional career. So the next question is about travel, and it's you've traveled the world. Do you have a favorite place, and where are you headed next?
I have traveled all over the world. When I was a child, my mother taught in Bangkok, and my father was a geologist, and he did work all over the world. And I succeeded in going to the Navy at age 18 and serving in Vietnam. So it's been international travel forever. Um, where's my favorite place? Wherever I'm going next with my sweetheart Dale.
I hope
And
Dale's
my next
watching.
trip coming up is well, I don't know if she is or not, but let's see. Next trip in a few weeks, I go to uh, Tokyo, Osaka, Seoul, um, and then to Mauritius, and then Paris, and then home. So it seems exotic unless you're the person who's sitting on all those airplanes.
But what
But that's also where I
wonderful.
do most of my,
No, go
I
ahead.
was
I know
going to
what you're.
say it's also where I do that's also where I do an awful lot of my writing because they're long trips and long chunks of time to sip wine and look at manuscript.
Well, Sim, one of the reviews that came in, um, a person obviously who doesn't know you personally, said that your scenarios were as if she were right there. And I knew that it was because of your travels and the amount of detail that goes into writing about certain locales. But it was great to see that someone reading the book could get that from it.
Hmm. Well,
David would
in
like.
Jasper's War, an awful lot of it takes place in Tuscany. They're all places that I've visited many times, and Dale and I were in each of the places in this particular story.
David has a question that I'd like to add to. He's asking, have your children read Jasper's War and what did they think of it? I'd like to know if Dale's read Jasper's War and what she thought of some of those, shall we say, sensual scenes.
Um, well, my children have read the book, but they haven't commented on it, so I do not know. um, uh, Carol, you need to be honest about this. And when you were going over the final manuscript, you declared that at one particular place we needed 50 shades of gray scene in it. So
I
I
knew
then
you were going.
composed that.
I knew you were going to blame me on that one,
And
and I accept it.
so
Oh,
when Dale read that, she did say that was an interesting scene, Sam.
thank you, Dale. This is interesting because this person must have read that you were in the U.S. Navy, and he's asking. This is Scott again. Have your experiences in the U.S. Navy helped you write this book?
Yeah, no question. Experiences in the U.S. Navy for me, and again, I was undistinguished as a polite term high school student, had no choice but to enlist in the U.S. Navy for 2 years, and I learned about life in those 2 years, including dreams. One character in this book is name is Nulandi, Australian Aborigine name who in this book is a half breed, and we served with warriors like that in Vietnam for lots of good reasons. But I was always fascinated with that kind of character in terms of if you take a child at birth and turn them into a killer, can they ever become human beings? And that's very much the that particular character in this story. He's connected to Jasper, so that they each have their own emotions to deal with in time.
And those characters are so well defined, and all of your reviews have said the same thing that they just fly across the page. And Greg's also agrees with me, one of your fans, that your characters are very compelling, and the book is fast paced and heart thumping, and the challenges go beyond. Um, Why do you think that people relate or feel for these characters and this story so much?
Well, I hope the reason is because people enjoy what I enjoy, which is thinking about and understanding the emotions of people. Throughout my life, especially in the Navy, I was always fascinated with why do people do what they do. Um, so in this book, I try to pick out characters who I would like to get to know and then explore their emotions. I've also found in uh, Carol and I both participate in the International Thriller Writers Association, which, if you will, is a trade association of thriller writers. And in talking with other writers and reading lots of books, I'm always fascinated that with so many thrillers don't seem to address the emotions of the characters. And in my writing, I want to understand why does Jasper do what she does? What does she think about the things she has to do to save her children? What does Nulandi think about becoming attracted to a woman who actually has some emotion and character? Then we have the other main character is a Cherokee Indian chief who's a Warren Buffett type investor. He has entirely different kind of emotions of getting involved in something as the plot of Jasper's War evolves. So I'm just, Greg, I'm just fascinated with how and why people do what they do and how they feel about it.
Another fan of yours, Abby, says, and you'll appreciate this. This book is not to be missed. And then goes on to say, did you have any other titles in mind before you decided to call this book Jasper's War? Oh, did you? Right.
Oh yeah, I had all kinds of titles. Let's see. The one title was the dust scenario. Um, Carol, I've forgotten what it was the first time you looked at it.
I think it was Dust
Uh,
Scenario, which had to do a lot with the financial aspect of some of the scenes in the book. And then, of course, there was Bear Strike for Chief Bear
right.
Strike. And he's such a fabulous character that everybody falls in love with him. But then we realized in some of our conversations with Meryl Moss and the rest of your team that the book really was about Jasper. And
Right.
the fact that this woman of wealth and living in the lap of luxury in the most one of the most beautiful areas in the country, literally turned her life around and would do anything, as most mothers would, to save these children. And you made her so strong and so believable that there was no, once we said it, it was a aha moment. Of course it has to be Jasper's War. Do you remember that conversation we had in the office?
Oh, absolutely, no question.
Yeah,
But
and right after, go ahead.
well, as you can say, for Abby's benefit, I think any story like this evolves through lots of different titles and character names until it all comes together at the end.
David has a good question for you. John Land, whom we all know is a wonderful author as well as Cym Lowell, he said some great things about your book, calling it a brilliant debut. So David wants to know, what was your reaction to someone so prominent in the thriller genre having such great words to say about your book? How did you feel about that?
Well, I'm humbled, of course. I'm a newbie thriller writer. I may be an experienced international tax lawyer, but I'm a newbie thriller writer. I love to write. I love to express and explore emotions. And I think John Land is one of the best thriller writers. I thoroughly enjoy his series about Caitlin Strong, who's a fourth generation Texas Ranger. And John, I've admired him for a long time, and we know him through the International Thriller Writers Association. But I was humbled, and the words he used to express his views on this book were humbling. That's the best word.
Tommy wants to know how much research you had to do before writing Jasper's War.
Well, that's a good question, Tommy. None. I like to write about what I know about. So in this case, the background of the book, it's not a financial book. The background of the book is financial collapse, and I have my own theories about that, and uh, everything in the story is things I know and understand, and I like to write about things I know, not about things I have to research to try to figure out what's going on. So if the book seems realistic, it's because it's all about things I have experienced or I know and I'm comfortable writing about.
Jamie says your book cover is great. Did you have any say in the design of it?
I'm happy to say I had no say at all except to say it's wonderful. That's Carol's work and Merrill Moss's work. They designed the cover.
Actually, we have a team, but I will make sure that they get that message because I think that the cover to me has to say exactly what's in that book at first glance. You've been in stores before, you've gone to Barnes and Noble, whatever, and if the cover can draw you in, that's the first step in buying the book and taking it home. Um,
Yep.
But now I would like to talk a little bit about Operation Next Chapter, and I'm glad that David has asked this question. Operation Next Chapter is an initiative unlike any other. Can you talk a little bit about the initiative, how it came about, and the response you've gotten from this movement so far? It's probably one of the most special campaigns I've ever worked on in my career, and I'm not just saying that, Sim, because you and I have talked privately about this, but it's one of the most altruistic campaigns, and you are the creator of it, and you are the driving force. So I'd like you to tell your fans a little bit more about it and how it came about.
Well, I will do that in terms of, excuse me, let me do that in terms of my own emotions about this. I served in Vietnam in 1964 to 1966. When I came home, we were spit upon. I mean, soldiers of that era were not honored. They were damned all the way around. And I went off to college and ultimately law school, and thank God I had the GI Bill to finance all of that. And I then went off into life and had a family, had a career, always loved to write. And when Dale started reading some of those stories I wrote, she said, "These aren't bad. You ought to see about getting them published." And when Jasper's War was done, and Carol was the editor for Jasper's War, um, I was looking for something more. And I live in a place called Rosemary Beach, Florida, and we were having some work done on a geothermal well, which is allegedly a way of moderating heating and air conditioning prices by pumping water down into the groundwater. And we had some trouble, and the contractor had this little pin on his lapel. And I kept asking him, "What is that lapel pin for?" And he said, "Well, it's for Soldiers Angels." And he explained that it's a group of some 16,000 volunteers who, during Iraq and Afghanistan, would send packages off to every every serviceman or woman who wanted them every 2 weeks. And he mentioned this program that was then just being initiated of providing these voice-activated computers for veterans who can't use their hands. And that's one of the times in my life I just about started crying. And I'm starting to cry now thinking about just the sheer emotion of remembering my experience and trying to imagine what it would be like to be a veteran who can't use his or her hands, and then to be able to give that person a communication device. And through the work we've done, Carol, I've met veterans who've been able to go to college. I met a man last night who, with the computer he got several years ago, I mean, this program's been going on for a while, was able to go to college and finish college and have a career. And we're doing that now. And like I said, there's 200 on a waiting list. And I can think of no greater honor in my life than to make that waiting list zero and have 100 in reserve.
You
So
know,
it's,
Sim,
it's my joy. I mean, this is all for me.
again, I want to reiterate to all of your fans that Sim is getting no profits from the book. It is all going toward this initiative, Operation Next Chapter. So we hope you spread the word, tweet it out, do it on Facebook, LinkedIn, any social media contacts that you have. Um, It is one of the most heartwarming charities, Soldiers Angels, and they don't have a chapter. Believe it or not, they are national, but they do not have a chapter in New York or in the metropolitan area. And my daughter Tara and I are going to start a chapter in the Connecticut area that we hope will be
Oh, cool.
successful. So we're looking forward to that. Um, I know that on Soldiers Angels website, some of the military has started to kick in about how they feel about this initiative, and um, they are asking how they themselves can join in, and uh, w- uh, what are the armed forces saying about your book that you've heard? That's what Abby would like to know. I was being a little bit going around in circles with that one. Um, I would imagine some of them have reached out to you and have said good things. But that's not what you're all about, Sim.
What last,
I know you get almost embarrassed when people compliment you on that, but Abby has asked the question about, how do you feel and what have you heard from the military about this initiative?
well, last night in San Antonio was actually the first time I've met with military officers on this topic, and the reaction basically is thank you. I mean,
Hmm.
it's there's all those brave men and women who are in need, and the Department of Defense tests a veteran and provides the software, but
Hmm.
Soldiers and Angels provides the computers. As you might guess, these have to be very powerful computers to
Hmm.
process the verbal instructions. But thus far, to answer Abby's question, only support.
When we were in New York City as part of the kickoff campaign that actually began in Washington, D.C., you were invited to speak to students at the Intrepid Museum. There were about 200 there that day, but we also met Captain Talk and his dog Liz, his service dog. And then we also were talking to some servicemen, some wounded warriors in Washington about these service dogs, and that it takes 2 years to train them and $55,000 in total. And there are so many people that are in need, so many wounded warriors that are in need. But I think Captain Talk really brought the point home about these service heroes, these service people that come back from war, and some of them, like we met in Washington D.C., would at first glance, unless they have a prosthetic on or a patch over their eye, like Captain Talk, they don't look like they are in need. And the fact that, as you said, the brain trauma that most of these people are subjected to after coming home from war and being in the zone, the war zone, are really in need of devices such as the voice-activated laptop computers, service dogs that provide them with needs that even I didn't realize until I met Captain Talk. Um, how can we help them, Sim? How can your readers and your admirers and your fans and friends and family, how can we reach out across the pages of the book to say, yes, I would like to donate, to help, to contribute to this initiative?
Well, the easiest way is simply go to the Soldiers and Angels website and see all the initiatives they have. And I'm sure there's a means of um, being in communication to understand the stories of some of these brave warriors and heroes who come home. I mean, as you said, Carol, in this process, we've met veterans and awarded computers to people who have prostheses, and it's obvious that they have injuries. But there's others, and we've spoken with warriors and their spouses, where the warrior has PTSD or other brain injuries and simply cannot stand to be alone, so that the spouse has to be there present all the time, which of course imposes a huge amount of stress. Or hopefully there's a means of getting a service dog. But the cost of a computer is a little bit less than $1,000, and the cost of a service dog can be $50,000 or $60,000. It's an
Amazing.
incredible cost, and there are nonprofit organizations and VA and other groups that provide those service dogs, but there's also a very long waiting list for those.
Before we sign off, and we could go on for another half hour, an hour with just talking about this, I know that you were at the Burn Center last night. Am I correct? Or are you going there today? Did you go there today?
I was at the Burn Center today.
What did you find there? I've never ever been to a burn center, especially not a military burn center. What was it like?
Well, it's a military burn center, but about 70% of their patients today are civilians. So
Hmm.
it's one of two or three major burn centers in the United States, and they take care of burns, period. If there's a lot of war casualties, of course, they all uh, are immediately medevaced. And I guess I have three or four reactions. One is last night at a Soldiers and Angels event, I met a hero by the name of Bobby who's burned over 100% of his body. He's now a comedian, but his vehicle was blown up. All of his colleagues were killed, and he was burned over 100% of his body. His skull was exposed to the sky, and
Oh,
he was delivered back to the United States within, as I recall, 24 hours. So he's been in that burn center to have his whole body reconstructed, and he's become a comedian, and he now does opening acts in Las Vegas and whatnot, and there's pictures of him on the Soldiers and Angels website. But to look at a human being like that and think of your own feelings of inadequacy, I mean, I have them, you have them, we all have them. But to look at what this man has achieved is incredible. And all through that burn center are just other people who've had their half of their body or more burned, and to see the technology that's coming out of that, and just comparing it to when I was in Vietnam in 1964 and 1966, anybody who was seriously burned had no chance of living. And the reason was because it took so long to get them to a place where they could get on an airplane and go to the Philippines, then blah, blah, blah. Now they're brought here to San Antonio within 24 hours. It's absolutely amazing.
and
But
you're
the work
still
of those people and their motivation and what they do is absolutely incredible, Carol.
you are still not finished in San Antonio. You have one more event tonight. Until I started this campaign with you, never heard of Fiesta Week, but I hear it's the biggest thing, 10 times bigger than Mardi Gras. And you're off to where tonight to do what?
Well, we're going to one of 20 VFW facilities within like a 15-mile radius of San Antonio. That's how big the military is here. And during Fiesta Week, they have lots of parties, and this is a party at a VFW. And I will make my version of a inspirational presentation in the context of Fiesta and salsa dancing, they call it. And I'm not much of a dancer, but three of the ladies from Soldiers and Angels are going to go with me, and they assure me they're going to teach me how to salsa
Oh
dance. And
boy.
my daughter's going to show up. I'll have four ladies with me tonight
Your daughter's
to
coming
try
to
to learn how to
protect you.
salsa.
Do you
Yeah,
know that
probably
the
so.
VFW that you're going to is the oldest VFW in the state of Texas?
I learned that last night. Yes, it's amazing.
Little tidbit.
And it's a very
All,
large facility as well.
all I have to say to people watching is go out and buy the book. Every single sale of the book goes to Operation Next Chapter. Also, don't forget to log back on to BookTrib and win a copy of Jasper's War at the end of the chat. Cym, I can't thank you enough. It's a pleasure to see you, even though it's on the screen, and I look forward to meeting you in New York at Thrillers Fest again. Thank you so much, and thank you for
Take care.
everything you're doing for the service men and women of the United States of America. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carol. You're organizing it all.
Couldn't do it without you, Cym. Take care and watch
Good,
watch your hips tonight.
good team. Good team.